Good morning. Thank you so much for coming out today. I'm Jenny Beth Martin with Tea Party Patriots Action. Thank you for this stop. Thank you. Thank you, Harrisburg, for our stop for the Only Citizens Vote bus tour. We began 2.5 weeks ago in California, and we went from California all the way across the southern half of the country to North Carolina. Last weekend, over Labor Day weekend, the bus repositioned to Wisconsin. Thankfully, my team and I were able to fly home briefly and then fly into Wisconsin. And we began again on Monday, on Labor Day in Wisconsin. We're ending here today in Pennsylvania. Monday, we stop in Maryland. And then on Wednesday, we finish in Washington, D.C. The point of this bus tour is pretty simple. We want only American citizens voting in American elections for president, Senate, and Congress. And you agree with this, and so do 87% of Americans. Over 80% of Americans want this simple thing when we are voting. It is a nonpartisan issue. Over 75% of Democrats, over 75% of independents, over 90% of Republicans agree, and 86% of Americans want to require proof of citizenship to register to vote. That's what the SAVE Act will do. The SAVE Act has passed the House of Representatives twice, once in the last Congress and once in this Congress. And both times it did have bipartisan support. Now, I'll grant you it was not a lot. This time we had 4 Democrats who voted for it. But still, the point is that even some Democrats have voted for this. It has stalled both Congresses so far in the Senate. Last Congress, Schumer did not bring it to the floor. Senator Schumer did not bring it to the floor. And so far this Congress, Senator Thune has not brought it to the floor. So we want to make sure that it gets a vote in the Senate, and we want it to pass. And so if it doesn't pass with a standalone vote as a standalone bill, then we think it should be added to what's called must-pass legislation. That's the kind of legislation that members of Congress vote on because they feel like if they don't vote on it, then their constituents will be really angry, and they feel like they must vote for it. So we have some of that coming up this month with appropriation bills and a continuing resolution. If we're not able to attach it to one of those, we have another bite at the apple with the National Defense Authorization Act. So those are some kind of technical strategies for how we can attach it to legislation. But frankly, Democrat senators should be willing to bring this to the floor for a vote because their constituents agree with this. It is protecting American voters and ensuring that only American citizens vote in our elections. It's a pretty simple bill. It doesn't try to do a whole lot. We wanted to make it as simple and concise as possible so it has a better chance of passing. And that is why we are here today and the goal of our bus tour. When you walked in and you signed in today, you checked off a petition or you checked off adding your name to a petition. We'll be delivering those petitions to Capitol Hill next week when we end the tour on Wednesday. And I hope all of you will make plans to join us down in D.C. on Wednesday at noon at Upper Senate Park. All right, now you've heard what the purpose is and what we're doing. I'm going to let you hear from some people here in Pennsylvania and from some of our coalition partners. And we are going to start with Congressman Scott Perry. Come on up, Congressman.
Well, thank you, Jenny Beth. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming to Harrisburg, Central Pennsylvania, the 10th Congressional District. Welcome, everybody. Look, ladies and gentlemen, this is just, quite honestly, a simple issue of fairness. It's, as I told some of the other folks here earlier, it's amazing that we even have to have this discussion. But maybe you don't realize it, but people can vote in our elections that are here illegally, and they do that. And it's just unacceptable. You wouldn't invite some complete stranger into your home and have them make decisions for your family. Yet that's what we're doing in our country, and we're saying that should not be happening. Now, as Jenny Beth stated, this is an issue. It doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right, if you're a Democrat or Republican, independent. It doesn't matter. Most people across the country believe in this and want this to be done regardless of their political affiliation. And we've passed the bill in the House twice. It is stalled in the Senate. Even if it's not going to be attached to must-pass legislation, and I think it'd be great if that happens, but people need to know where their representatives stand. You already know where I stand. I voted in favor of it when it was in the House, but now it's in the Senate. We need to know where Senator McCormick stands, and we need to know where Senator Fetterman stands on this issue. People need to know. Like I said, this is simply an issue of fairness. I mean, if you have to, I will just tell you, I happen to know somebody, a young lady who just gotten her driver's permit. She had to show up with her birth certificate and prove that she's an American citizen to get a driver's license. Yet, you can come into our country without any proof of citizenship, go to the polls, and vote, and no one checks on it. What this bill simply says is that states must verify at the time of registration whether you're a citizen or not. And we think that's an easy ask. We think that's an obvious, common sense thing to do. You can't have people from other countries, especially adversarial countries, coming in and making decisions on what we do in this country. And so if you don't want your vote to be diminished, and that's what happens, right? Every time that someone else that's here illegally votes, it means that your vote counts less. Well, we are not subjects of the king or the crown or something like that. We are citizens here, and it's our job, it's our duty, and it's our right to be able to vote and not have our voices lessened or diminished because someone is allowed to come to this country and have their input put in when they don't belong here and have no right to be here and are not legally voting. So what we're saying is that, like, again, I can't believe we have to have this conversation, but this is what's happening, so we have to have the conversation. And instead of having the conversation now, let's take some action. So I appreciate you coming and for all your work and efforts in informing everybody. A lot of people don't even know that this is occurring. So this is great service to everybody, and I appreciate being a part of it. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you so much, Congressman Perry. And now we're going to hear from former ambassador to Denmark under President Trump in his first administration and the current chair of the Forum of Foreign Policy for the America First Policy Institute, Carla Sands.
Thank you, Jenny Beth. Thank you for what you're doing. This is real service to all Americans because we know this is a bipartisan issue. The people are with us. Let me just give you a few examples. There are 55 million visa holders, U.S. visa holders, 55 million. We want election integrity. We have students from around the world, including Chinese citizens, students registering to vote and voting in our elections. This has to stop. And this law, H.R. 22, when it passes, the SAVE Act, when it passes, those people are not going to be able to vote in our elections because they're going to have to show proof that they're a citizen. And it's about time. They're going to have to show ID when they vote. It's about time. There's going to be other cleanup because there are counties across our country that are refusing to clean up their voter rolls. They're refusing to remove illegals and people that have moved away from their voter rolls. Why? There's only one reason why someone would do that. They want to steal the election. I will tell you something else. They tried to steal Scott Perry's seat in the last election. So there's these Uakava voters. These are people living abroad. They don't have to prove they're a U.S. citizen. They send a vote. They're not registered to vote, and the Democrats wanted to count every one of those votes. It would have stolen his seat. I personally wrote a check to fight against that. And this is happening all across Pennsylvania, in counties across Pennsylvania, the Uakava. This will clean up that problem. This is 55 million U.S. visa holders. How many of them are registered to vote? So I'm going to ask you to do some homework. It's really easy to go online and find the Senate switchboard number. It starts with 202. I want you to call on Monday John Thune's office, Dave McCormick's office, and John Fetterman's office. 3 senators. 1 that's going to bring the bill to the floor, and 2 that represent us here in Pennsylvania. And I want you to tell them, we want you to pass the SAVE Act. The Senate is stopping this from passing. It's in their hands. The House has passed it. Scott said they've passed it twice. Let's hold our senators accountable. Let's get the SAVE Act passed. Let's secure our elections so that we have clean elections And then we have good leadership across our state and across the country. Thanks so much. Thanks, Jenny Beth. This is terrific. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all the sponsors that are doing this. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you so much. And as Carla was saying about the UACAVA, let me elaborate on that just a little bit. There's a myth from the left that will say that the SAVE Act will make it harder to vote by mail and it will harm military and minorities. The Uniformed Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, which is what UACAVA stands for, was created to help overseas service members and their families vote. But there is no uniform proof of citizenship requirement for registration, and voter registration, for UACAVA votes or voters, and no ID requirement when they cast their ballot from abroad. And because of that, in many jurisdictions, UACAVA ballots can even be returned electronically. In 2020, 63% of UACAVA ballots UACAVA overseas ballots were cast without any citizenship check. I read this wrong. I skipped a line. They were, I'm so sorry. 63% of UACAVA ballots were civilian spouses of voting overseas by the military, meaning a large share of them were cast without any sort of citizenship check. Who are these the civilians, and are they citizens? Requiring proof of citizenship and registration closes this gap without blocking military voting. And the claim that Americans of color or poor Americans are not able to acquire an ID is both false and insulting. Government-issued IDs is available to anyone who legally wants to obtain one. There is also a myth that this will harm women because women change their name. I'm a woman. I've been married and I am divorced, and I understand that when I'm going to get my driver's license, or if I were doing this, if the SAVE Act passes, when I'm registering to vote, I would need to bring my birth certificate, my marriage certificate, and my divorce decree and show that I indeed was a citizen when I was born, and then show the evolution of my name changes. It's pretty simple. Women do this every day when they choose to change their names. And frankly, I think it is a sexist comment to say that we as women can't figure out how to do this. We do it all the time, and we understand how it needs to be done. Okay, now we are going to hear from Rosemary Jinks, who is with the Immigration Accountability Project.
Thank you so much, Jenny Beth. It has been a privilege for the Immigration Accountability Project to partner with Tea Party Patriots Action on this bus tour because, as Congressman Perry said, this is common sense. This shouldn't even be a conversation. I want to, first of all, thank Jenny Beth and her entire team with the Tea Party Patriots Action. They have been phenomenal in this cross-country, literally all the way across the nation. And so I'm sure that this has been exhausting. I've only been on a few of the stops, but we are just so proud to partner with you. The Immigration Accountability Project, our mission is to hold members of Congress accountable for their immigration actions. Y'all in this district are lucky that you have a congressman like Scott Perry that we don't have to worry about because he's on the right side of all the issues. As Carla mentioned, 55 million visa holders. We have the largest share of foreign-born population in our country that we have ever had in our entire history. The largest share and the largest total number. This surpasses what we had at the turn of the last century during the great wave of immigration. So we're in unprecedented territory here. Now, because I do the immigration part, I will tell you that we wouldn't have a problem with non-citizen voting if we didn't have 55 million visa holders in this country. So the issue that we have with non-citizens is that every non-citizen who comes into the United States, legally or illegally, can get a driver's license in 19 states. Every non-citizen who comes in legally can get a real ID in all 50 states. Every state issues real IDs to non-citizens. Every alien who is eligible to work in the United States is automatically issued a Social Security number. With a driver's license and a Social Security number, You have everything you need to register to vote in every state. Now, if we pass the SAVE Act, that changes, obviously, and you would have to prove your citizenship. But think about this. If you care at all about the legal non-citizens in this country, when they go into a DMV and they fill out the form that they have to fill out, and then the DMV offers them the registration, the voter registration form, which the motor voter law at the federal level tells them to do, and then the DMV official says, check this box and sign your name. If you don't speak English, you sure can't read English. You have no idea that it says under penalty of perjury, I swear I'm a U.S. citizen, right? You don't know that you've just committed a felony that makes you ineligible to naturalize, and it makes you deportable. So we're basically, through the motor voter law, we're basically entrapping non-citizens into illegally registering to vote, and then in a mail-in ballot state, they get mailed a ballot. Of course they're going to vote. They don't know any better because we haven't told them that they have to prove U.S. citizenship in order to vote. So we've got to change this. We've got to pass the SAVE Act. And I can, by the way, give you the phone number for the Capitol Switchboard, 202-224-3121. Call your senators. Call your senators, and then call John Thune, and then call everyone else, John Barrasso, everyone in leadership. Call them all and say, we want to vote on the SAVE Act. It is time to end the nonsense because I want my vote to count. Do you want your vote to count? Yeah. Thank you very much, Jenny Beth.
Thank you very much, Rosemary. And Rosemary just debunked another myth that driver's license should be enough to register to vote. She explained why a driver's license alone does not prove citizenship. Now we're going to hear from Josh Finley with the Texas Public Policy Foundation.
Thank you, Jenny Beth. I'm Josh Findlay with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. I'm the director of the Election Protection Project, and one of the authors and original co-sponsors of this bill. Chip Roy is an alum of the Texas Public Policy Foundation, so we are fully in support of this bill and non-citizen voting, and ending non-citizen voting. I'd like to thank Representative Perry for co-sponsoring this bill and being a great conservative member of Congress, Ambassador Sands for her support on this issue. I want to thank Jenny Beth and her team for all of the work that they've done on this. And I really want to thank all of the citizens that have come out to support on this issue. From California to Pennsylvania, from Michigan and Wisconsin down to Georgia and the Carolinas, we need to show Washington that this is an issue that Americans want fixed. On the board behind us, it says 80%. Jenny Beth said earlier it was more like 87%. 87% of people across the board want only citizens to vote. And it's important to note that this is not just numbers from polling. When people have the chance to vote on this issue, they do. Now, I'm going to talk about something that y'all know here in Pennsylvania. Activist Supreme Court judges. All right? Y'all have an election coming up in November on this. Well, y'all may have heard that Wisconsin had a vote on this earlier this year. Got heavily politicized, made national news, and they elected a leftist Supreme Court justice in a statewide race that revolved largely around election integrity. The thing that people don't talk about, though, is that on that exact same ballot, there was a citizen initiative about voter ID that passed. When people had the chance to vote on a policy, apart from the way that it had gotten politicized among the parties, they passed a voter ID law. And Rosemary went through the way that voter ID is not completely analogous. It doesn't fix everything with non-citizen voting, but it is a really good step in the right direction. Not only that, there were 8 different states this past fall that passed voter ID or non-citizen voting citizen initiatives. This is something that Americans agree with in polling, but also they agree with it at the ballot box. And we need to show Washington that this is something we want done. Thank you all for coming out, and thanks, Jenny Beth, for the support on this issue.
Thank you, Josh. So Josh mentioned that 8 states have passed the requirement for proof of citizenship to register to vote. And the state of Arizona has done that and did that many, many years ago. And in Arizona, if you show proof of citizenship to register to vote, you can vote for president, Senate, Congress, governor, lieutenant governor, and all the way on down to the most local level. The state was sued, and that lawsuit went all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court came in and said that the state must accept the form, the voter registration form that stems from what we call the motor voter law and what is actually called the National Voter Registration Act. That form has a simple checkbox to affirm you are a citizen. It doesn't require proof of citizenship. Now, in the state of Arizona, because of the Supreme Court ruling, and to their credit, as a constitutional conservative, I don't want the court making law out of whole cloth from the bench, and they did not do that. They basically said, you've got to do what the form says, and if Congress wants to change it, they should require proof of citizenship. Congress should change it. So now, the state of Arizona, if you show proof of citizenship, you get the full ballot, and in that border state, if you don't show proof of citizenship, you get what's called a federal-only ballot. And you still vote for president, Senate, and Congress if you don't show proof of citizenship. That's how I first learned about this weird disconnect and how I became active on this particular issue and this aspect of election integrity. And the Supreme Court said Congress needed to fix it, working with Cleta Mitchell from the Election Integrity Network, who is also a coalition partner on this bus tour. She and I worked with Congressman Perry, Congressman Chip Roy, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, and Senator Mike Lee to write the SAVE Act, and got it introduced last year and voted on again this year. So that kind of explains part of the issue and why there's such a disconnect. And all these states who have passed a requirement for proof of citizenship, if they're challenged, the same thing will happen. They have to accept the form that at the moment has a simple checkbox. Now, President Trump is working to change the checkbox on the form, and he can do that through executive action. But if we don't codify the change, meaning if we don't pass a law to require proof of citizenship, a future president could come back and undo the form again. There's 2 other myths that I want to address, and then I will introduce our last speaker. One is that some people on the left will say that an in-person requirement to register to vote is too much pressure. People show up for things that matter. To get a marriage license, a bank account, to get a government-issued ID, you have to show up in person, and you have to show up with documentation. And in-person voter registration with documentation of proof of citizenship is a common-sense safeguard to election integrity and to protect elections. And if the left is opposing this basic in-person verification, which we have to do in many other aspects of our life, it's because the loopholes suit their needs, and they are not interested in protecting elections. And then the last myth that I want to address is that they will say, well, it's already illegal for non-citizens to vote, so we don't need the SAVE Act. And that's correct. It is illegal for non-citizens to vote. But it still happens, just like all crime. And like many other crimes, including even the speed limit, we have checks and balances in there to help ensure people are following the law. How many of us have ever been pulled over because we were going over the speed limit? We have checks and balances even for something as simple as a speed limit. So in 2024, a study found that between 10 to 27% of non-citizens reported being registered to vote. And the reason is because of the way the form is and the things that Rosemary were saying. So we're just trying to help tighten the law and close the loophole, which the Supreme Court highlighted in the lawsuit against Arizona. And now, speaking of Arizona, we have Marissa Hamilton. She's from a group called Easy AZ, as in Easy Arizona. She's going to talk a little bit more about what happens in Arizona, and then she's going to go over the calls to action with you on our behalf.
Thank you so much, Jenny Beth. And thank you, everyone, for being here. You know, we didn't know that this issue was happening in Arizona for quite a long time. There was a former state senator named Kelly Townsend that I'm very good friends with, and she tried to amend our law to require proof of citizenship to vote, and it took almost a decade for us to be able to get that passed. But before that happened, the way we were able to get documentary proof of citizenship required for our state elections was because she passed a law that said, you know what, we need to start identifying and quantifying how many voters are registered without proof of citizenship. And as far as I know, we're the only state still to this day that quantifies that. And so about a decade ago when that passed, there was about 2,000, a little bit less than 2,000 voters statewide that hadn't shown proof of citizenship to vote. Today, there's almost 50,000 voters. And there's additional pressure put on that because last year we found out that there's a glitch in our system. And so we just got a brand new recorder of Maricopa County. Maricopa County is famous for doing bad elections and maladministration and all sorts of other bad things. And so we fired the last recorder that was responsible and providing coverage for a lot of those shenanigans. And the new recorder came in. And one of the first things he did is he took a look at what the proof of citizenship documentation is that they have access to. Well, the law states that the motor vehicle division is to send the recorders just a checkbox, just a data field in the database to tell them whether someone submitted proof of citizenship or not. So they never actually get to see the documents. So even though we have proof of citizenship, we don't have real documentary proof of citizenship because the recorders don't know if the documents exist. They have to rely on a data field. And last September, it was reported by that same recorder that we fired and the Secretary of State that there was a glitch in the system. And voters for almost 2 decades, the glitch was that the system was saying that they had provided proof of citizenship when they had not. And so that went through CORE, our organization, with the help of America First Legal sued to get some transparency on the situation. And we found that since 2015, they knew that this glitch existed, and they didn't do anything about it until it was a presidential election with President Trump on the ballot. Timing suspect, I am sure that's just a friendly coincidence. And so since then, our Attorney General has ruled that even if the recorders go and ask for proof of citizenship, that they cannot downgrade the voters if the voters don't provide proof of citizenship in the time frame that they are allocated to do so. And the only way that they can remove citizens is if they show affirmative proof that the person is not a U.S. citizen. Well, how do they do that? They can access the SAVE database. There's a number of other resources that they can use. Well, the Secretary of State has prohibited access to almost all of those resources. So it's kind of like they've made this glitchy system to glitch people out of having to follow the law and then glitch the recorders out of being able to enforce the law with requiring proof of citizenship and then give this loophole so that really there is no documentary proof of citizenship consistently across the board. And so that's the reason why we need the SAVE Act to pass. Because right now, those 50,000 voters, that can very well become 100,000 very quickly from that 200,000 that haven't shown their proof of citizenship yet. The SAVE Act is important because we know in Arizona from this glitch that there are people that are not citizens that are registering to vote. In fact, that MVD system is registering non-citizens without their consent or knowledge. We had the first person that we identified with the glitch was someone that was a non-citizen. And then after the news broadcast what the situation was, then another non-citizen came forward and said, I want to tell everyone that I am a non-citizen and I'm registered to vote, but I did not register myself to vote. The motor vehicle division system registered me to vote, and I keep trying to get myself removed, and then they keep re-registering me. And then in the primary, one of our volunteers had reaching out to voters, making sure that they were able to vote and got their ballot and knew everything they needed to know. And one of the voters that we called said, hey, maybe you can help me with a problem. I'm a citizen of France. And we were like, excuse me? Yeah, I'm registered to vote, but I'm a citizen of France. I'm not supposed to be registered to vote. Well, how did you register to vote? I have no idea. That's why I need your help. And so when the new recorder came in and he had his staff look at the database has a check mark saying that this citizen of France has proven their citizenship. Well, how is that possible? That's obviously wrong. And so this is why we need the SAVE Act passed, because we need real documentary proof of citizenship, not just in Arizona, but in every state, because it just makes sense. And whether there's someone that's a bad actor registering to vote to illegally vote, or there's someone that's being registered that is not a citizen and they don't even know, either way, the best course of action is to have proof of citizenship, and it's very easy. And also, we were talking to some of the protesters across the street. To their credit, they were very civil, and we could actually have a discussion, unlike the other day with the protesters that were in Ohio. But they said, this is going to be a problem for married women, like Jenny Beth had said. Well, I'm engaged. I'm getting married in December. My name's going to change in January. Now, it doesn't have to change, but I want to take my husband's last name. And so I said, I already have the paperwork all set and ready to go for when that happens, and I'm going to just keep it in my purse. It's going to be super easy. And she said, but it's too hard. And I was like, no, it was really easy. I just ordered a copy and got it, and I put it in my purse, and it's there all the time. No, it's way too hard. I promise you it's not. It's already done. And so I agree with Jenny Beth that it's absolutely an insult to women to say that we can't figure this out. We figure out things that are much more complicated every day. So let's get into our calls to action. Number 1, when you checked in, you probably got this card here. But I was looking through some of the forms, and there's a little checkbox right here that adds you to the petition. If you didn't check this box, then if you could, before you leave, see me or go, I guess they removed the table. So just see me, and I can write down your name and see if you want to be added to the petition. The other thing you can do is go to demandonlycitizensvote.com. Again, that's demandonlycitizensvote.com, and if you didn't check that box, you can sign the petition right then and there. We also have really cool bumper stickers that you can take with you to spread the word. And then I have these petition forms right here that you can take with you, that you can bring to your neighbors, you can bring to events, you can bring to your church if you have a like-minded church. And I do that every time. And get your friends and family to sign this petition here, and so that you can then give that to us before the September 10th rally. On the back of this form is an email address. All you need to do is just take a picture of the form and send it to us, and then we'll deliver it on Capitol Hill on September 10th. I can't stress enough how important it is that we get as many petitions as possible, especially from swing states like you in Pennsylvania and us in Arizona. The pressure is on us to make sure that we make our voices loud and clear to our senators. Even though our senators might be of a different party than what we may personally be registered, they still are responsible for representing us. And so I have their phone numbers handy if you want to take down some notes to give them a call. Senator Fetterman's phone number is, are you ready? It's 202-224-4254. Again, that's 202-224-4254. And every once in a while, Fetterman puts out a reasonable tweet. So I'm hoping one day that results in reasonable votes. And maybe a phone call from you can make that happen. And then Senator McCormick's phone number is 202-224-6324. Again, that's 202-224-6324. So just a friendly reminder, if you go to demandonlycitizensvote.com, everything that I talked about today is available on there. You can sign up to do an ice cream social and bring these petitions there. You can keep your signs and do a flag waving event at a street corner. You can even text friends and family and people that are in your contacts that are like-minded when you go to demandonlycitizensvote.com and click the Get Involved, and do that from the comfort of your home. There's lots of ways to get involved. Government goes to those who show up, and I love that we are in Pennsylvania because Benjamin Franklin said that we have a republic if we can keep it, and it is our job to keep it, and by doing this little bit of effort, we can do our part to save the republic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Marissa. And those petitions, while we are delivering them to Capitol Hill on Wednesday, and as many as you can get signed by your friends and family before Wednesday, we will deliver. You can continue to get them signed because the bill isn't going to be voted on Wednesday, and we still need to keep building support so that we can get this bill passed into law. That is the call to action and the main program down here, and we're about to close out our live stream, so thank